me, Amadeus! Welcome back to One Hit Wonderland, where we take a look at bands and artists known for only one song. And, okay, full disclosure, you know how I said I was done with requests for a while? Well, a couple people contacted me and told me, hey, you missed me. I'm not good at interacting with people. This request in particular, apparently he's been waiting for like 2 years. So I better get a jump on this, huh? And yes, we are going back to the 80s. It's such fertile ground for this show. And by the 80s, I mean the 1780s, because we are about to get down with everyone's favorite tribute to a classical period musical genius that also makes a good soundtrack to breakdance to. Rock Me Amadeus is one of the singularly weird pop songs of the 80s. Up there with Mr. Roboto, Ghostbusters, Tarzan Boy. There's just not anything really like it. I mean, there's no disco tribute to Vivaldi. No one's ever rapped the biography of Rachmaninoff. Also, it's in foreign. A weird kind of foreign that kind of tricks you into thinking it's in English, but it isn't. Well, finally, those 3 years of high school German are gonna come in handy. Sehr fantastisch. The man behind this new wave oddity is, of course, the Austrian superstar of the 80s. No, the other one. Falco. And while I usually do the show to try and figure out why artists could only score one hit, I think the bigger question is how Falco got even one hit. What the hell was going on in 1985? Seriously, did the guy just have a Halloween costume he wanted to reuse? Yeah, I think that's what happened here. Our story begins in a little town called Vienna, the birthplace of young Johann Hans Hölzel. Vienna is also, of course, where Mozart wrote all his big hits. Mozart started writing music when he was 3, and apparently young Hans was a bit of a prodigy himself. But he didn't want to be a classical prodigy, he wanted to be a pop star. So he dropped out of the Vienna Conservatory for the Arts as a teenager and started hanging out with the punks in the club scene. Joined a few bands, changed his name to Falco. The name, obviously, comes from alpine ski jumper Falco Weissflog. Look, I don't know. It's Austria. I don't know what they really have over there. They got chocolates, they got classical music, they got alpine skiing. Although this guy wasn't even Austrian, so I don't ask. I think he just thought the name was cool. It's a pretty cool name. Falco! Anyway, he had a band for a little while, but then he went solo. Eventually, in 1981, he scored a massive international hit. Didn't make it over here, obviously, but it was huge in most of Europe. Let's see what goofy, lost in translation Europop he was making. Okay, not so lost in translation. I'm picking up some English in there. I'm guessing the rapping in Deutschlish is going to be a recurring theme in this episode, but I'm digging the groove here. Does this sound familiar to anyone else? I can swear. Don't turn around, uh-oh. Huh. Okay. Don't turn around, uh-oh. I am obviously more familiar with the more famous English language version of this song, but yeah, this was originally in German and by Falco. Don't turn around indeed. Now, like nearly every goofy foreigner who has one hit in America, Falco was a huge deal in his home country, and again, through most of the continent. He's practically the David Bowie of Austria, apparently. But his second album didn't do that well anywhere. Falco's official website tells me it was too ahead of its time. If you say so, guys. Sounds pretty of its time to me. Falco himself thought it flopped for a different reason. It was just too in German. Clearly he needed to write more in English about topics us dumb Americans could understand. I mean, who would want to listen to an Austrian man sing about stuff in Austria? Okay, as it turns out, around 1984, Americans did care quite a bit about at least one Austrian subject. That was the year that a little movie came out called Amadeus, about the life of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and it won like 103 Oscars, and it even did really well at the box office, which is amazing considering it's a costume, award-bait drama with a lot of powdered wigs and tights and stuff. Falco, apparently already a big fan of Mozart, decided to make a song out of it. A rap song. Rock Me Amadeus would not have existed without the movie, and almost certainly wouldn't have been a hit in America without the movie. Which is weird, because Rock Me Amadeus is about Mozart being like this 18th century rock star, partying it up with women and drugs. Whereas, if you actually watch Amadeus, it seems to be about how Mozart is this irritating, punchable jackass who just happens to be a genius because life's stupid and not fair. It's like watching a movie where Steve Urkel is a virtuoso. But yeah, none of that is in the song. In the song, Wolfgang is the original punk rocker. Yeah, it is there in the movie a little. He does party and drink and throw cash around and get laid. He even has crazy dyed hair. The pink wig was the spiked mohawk of its day. But still, the music's 200 years old. I can see how it can all seem a little stuffy. That's why we all loved Rock Me Amadeus, because it recontextualized what could have been stiff old orchestral music into the modern day. I am, of course, bullshitting profusely. We all loved it because it was goddamn ridiculous. There's no way around it. No one likes this song because of any connection to Mozart. It got big because it's a mess of guttural, random-sounding syllables that, even in Germany, I have to believe it was taken as mostly a joke. I mean, how can you listen to all that Wagnerian chanting and not just laugh? And seriously, you gotta give it up for Falco's weird, froggy delivery. Does he have the hiccups? He sounds like when the Fat Boys would beatbox. And there are like a billion different mixes of this song, but what they all basically have in common is that they just keep adding more and more crazy shit after the second chorus. Key change! Violin solo! More women cooing over Mozart. And that chorus, that is just undeniable. It's impossible to get out of your head. But I don't really think the song ever really gets past being a novelty. I mean, it's fun, it's funny and weird, it's one of a kind, but it's not like it led to any new trends. There wasn't a rush of German language hits. In fact, the only real hit song that really resembles Rock Me Amadeus, I think, is Gangnam Style, honestly. I mean, that's another goofy foreign hit with some random English thrown in. In fact, that's exactly what this song sounds like. It's like the first K-pop hit, only it's from Austria. A-pop. While this may seem like a joke to you and me, and I'm pretty sure everybody, Falco did remain a huge pop star in Europe for a long, long time. Let's see why. After Rock Me Amadeus, Falco released his follow-up, Let's Jam Salieri. It did just okay, and critics consider it largely mediocre compared to Rock Me Amadeus. Okay, I'm kidding. The next hit was called Vienna Calling. Like I said, the man was very proud of his homeland. Well, you know, this Falco guy, he certainly knows his way around a hook. He's got away with these big slamming choruses that you can't forget. That's why this song was actually a top 20 hit. Seriously, I mean, I have never heard of this song ever. No one remembers it or talks about it, but apparently Falco was one of those borderline, kinda not one-hit wonders. So, that's why I never got to this request in 2 years, obviously. It's not really a one-hit wonder. But why didn't anyone remember this song? Well, I have a theory. I mean, even if you don't speak a word of German, I think you can get the gist what Rock Me Amadeus is about. It's about Amadeus and how he rocks. Vienna Calling, I have no clue what it's supposed to be, even translating the lyrics.
Vielen kleine Mädchen heute hier und dort und gar ob in Tucson, Arizona, Toronto, Canada.
I assume that's a takeoff on The Clash's London Calling. Of course, the phrase London Calling comes from dispatches from the British government during World War II. I don't think Vienna Calling is a reference to anything. And then there was this other hit from that album, a Foreigner-style power ballad called Genie.
Genie, quit living on dreams. Genie, life is not what it seems. Such a lonely little girl in a cold, cold world.
Like I said, the man knew how to write those big 80s choruses.
Schon spät, komm.
And then the rest of it is in German, but I assume it's about some girl who doesn't realize that Falco loves her and so on.
Es ist kalt, wir müssen weg hier, komm. Du hast gesagt, mach mich nicht an. Aber du warst durchschaut. Augen sagen mehr als Worte. Du brauchst mich doch, hm? Sie kommen. Sie kommen dich zu holen. Sie werden dich nicht finden. Niemand wird dich finden. Du bist bei mir!
Well, I think we don't have to think very hard about why his creepy serial killer anthem didn't catch on in the States. I mean, I'm sure we had some of our own, but not in German. The Germanness just makes it too much. Oh yes, quite famous for much of the rest of his life. This one is called The Sound of Musik. Man likes his hip-hop, what can I say? Notice he only name checks artists that Americans would know. Still chasing that crossover that wasn't ever gonna happen again, I think. After a while, his success was mostly limited to the German-speaking part of the world, but otherwise, he was still a pretty big deal. He war ein Superstar. Just one problem. Around this time, he started hitting the schnapps pretty hard, and it would really start to destroy him. But let's check out what else he did. This one is called Coming Home. Alright, let's see who's coming home. Wait, the doll again? Oh, come on!
I would give anything just to see you again. Coming home.
Leave this poor girl alone. I mean, it's not like it's a bad song, but it was, in fact, super controversial over in Europe, so I'm not sure why he felt the need to go back to the creepy girl abductor well so many times. Let's see, what else? This guy really liked his Sugar Hill Gang, huh?
Show me the way. You move your body night into days.
Wait, holy crap, is that Brigitte Nielsen?
Life on the run.
Yeah, that is Red Sonja herself, fresh off the success of Cobra.
Body next to body, turn.
Let's be real, there are worse musicians she could have teamed up with. Here's one called Wienerblut. I like that one because it's fun to say. Apparently it just means Viennese blood. The Red Hot Chili Peppers don't write about California as much as Falco raps about Vienna, goddamn. Okay, after the 80s, the guy largely disappears. His albums stopped selling. Also, he's starting to have real problems with der Alkohol und das Kokain. Okay, then he moved to the Dominican Republic for tax reasons. He was working on his comeback, but the drugs and alcohol finally got to him. He was driving drunk and got hit by a bus and died in 1998 at the age of just 40. Shortly after his death, the label released 2 posthumous albums, Out of the Dark and my favorite, Verdammt wir leben noch, which translates to We're Still Alive, goddammit. And in the video, he's hanging out with all these dead legends, Elvis and Einstein, Bogart, Freddie Mercury. And in his home country, he is now basically a dance music legend himself. And much like his idol Mozart, his untimely death only secured his legacy. Although I hope he got a better send-off than Mozart did. Well, he did well enough in his home country, obviously, but did he deserve to be bigger in the US and the UK? No. I'm not saying he's bad. He's actually very interesting. It's just I can't imagine a world where Falco has a sustainable career in America. And according to the biography, he tried many times, but it just never came together. Apparently, he arguably wasn't even a one-hit wonder. But even if every one of his singles had crossed over, you'd think of him as a one-hit wonder anyway. Rock Me Amadeus is just a thing that shouldn't even be, and yet so wonderfully is. And that's the way it should be listened to. A bizarre experiment never to be repeated. Falco, ruhet in Frieden. Auf Wiedersehen.
Amadeus.